Hi, I'm Sandy, registered dietitian with Flik Hospitality Group. Happy Friendsgiving! Yay! So excited. So today we are showcasing Brussels sprouts, and if you don't love Brussels sprouts, today is going to change your mind. My family loves Brussels sprouts now, but I can tell you it has not always been a fan favorite of mine, because if your family was anything like mine, we grew up with steamed Brussels sprouts in the microwave, and then my dad would dunk them in distilled vinegar, and my brother and I would just sit there and choke them down. So this recipe is nothing like that. It's gonna be epic and amazing. So let's get started. For my Brussels sprout gratin, we are using about 2.5 pounds. I have roughly 2 pounds of Brussels sprouts, or fresh Brussels sprouts. If you've never seen a fresh Brussels sprout, this is what a little guy looks like. I have washed these Brussels sprouts, and all I'm doing, I just wanted to show you this, is I'm trimming the bottom off. If you can see that, it's kind of just, you know, brown on the bottom. We don't want to eat that. So trimming the bottom off, and then if there's any loose leaves on the outside, I'm just kind of pushing those off with my fingers. And then we are going to roast these Brussels sprouts at 450 degrees for about 15 to 20 minutes. You're looking for just a little bit of caramelization and golden brown color on these beauties. And then we're gonna remove them, and I'm gonna show you how to make the bechamel sauce. It's gonna go over that luscious, creamy sauce with cheese in it, right? And the crispy topping on there. How can you not love Brussels sprouts this way? Right? The other thing I'm doing with these Brussels sprouts is I'm cutting them in half, right? So half lengthwise, so you have 2 little pieces like that, and that, as the leaves fall off, and that's all I'm doing to these. I'm gonna bake them in the same dish, well, roast them in the same dish that I will be baking the gratin in. I'm all about less mess, right, and less use of any kind of receptacles I have to wash at the end of the day when I'm thinking of Thanksgiving. And then this can also be made ahead of time. You can cut and prep all these Brussels sprouts, and then you can have them ready to go for Thanksgiving and just make the sauce ahead of time, the crumbs ahead of time, and just toss it together and heat it on Thanksgiving Day, which is the piece I love. All right, so these are all prepped out. Now all I'm doing in my baking dish, and it's a pretty hefty size, it's about a 9 by 13 inch baking dish. I'm just gonna drizzle these with olive oil, about 1 to 2 tablespoons of olive oil. I'm not adding seasoning to this because, again, that's coming later. Then I'm just gonna toss these to coat, pop them in the oven, 450 again, 15 to 20 minutes until golden brown. And while these are cooking, we're gonna make some sauce in the breadcrumbs. All right, our Brussels sprouts are roasting away in the oven, and while they're doing that, we're going to do the crispy crumb topping and the bechamel, which is actually going to be a mornay sauce because we're adding cheese into it, that creamy sauce that's going to tie everything together. And I have a skillet here heating up over a medium heat, which I'm going to add in 1 tablespoon of butter. It can be salted or unsalted. I prefer salted, and then I just monitor the amount of salt that I'm adding into it. If you're using unsalted, you're just going to need a little bit more butter, or a little bit more salt into that. So I'm going to let that kind of melt around here. And then I have panko breadcrumbs. If you don't have panko, you can use traditional breadcrumbs. It's totally fine. Cracker crumbs are good too. Really anything that's going to add a little bit of crunch on top. And so these are nice panko breadcrumbs. They're nice fine white breadcrumbs there. You can get them in just your traditional section where all the breadcrumbs are in your grocery store. Sometimes they're in the international section as well. So to this melted butter, I'm going to add in my panko breadcrumbs. All we're doing here is toasting them off lightly, and then I'm adding in just a 1/4 teaspoon of salt to this, and then a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. All we're gonna do is let them toast over medium heat just for about 5 minutes, just until they're golden brown. You don't want them to be super brown because that'll be burnt, right? Just golden brown. I have a smoked cracked black pepper that I like to use. Traditional pepper is fine. I just prefer the smokiness of this cracked black pepper. And you're gonna add about a 1/4 teaspoon of that. And to tie into, I'm not a very traditional person. I keep my stuffing traditional. That's about it at Thanksgiving. I like to play around with all of my recipes. I like to try something new each year and just add it to the table. So this is one that I have added last year into the mix of things. Before, I used to do sweet potatoes all the time, which we still do, but I wanted to add something a little bit different here. So I'm not very much of a traditionalist when it comes to that sense with my sides, but definitely don't mess with my stuffing. That's like my big thing. All right, so while these are toasting away, in my other pan over here, I am going to heat this over medium heat. We're gonna make that mornay sauce, right? And mornay sauce is really just a bechamel sauce, right? You're starting with a base of butter, you're thickening it with a roux, which we're gonna use all-purpose flour as our thickening agent, and then you're adding your milk to it, and then we're finishing it with the cheese. You could easily make this vegetarian or vegan. So you could use any sort of dairy alternative. I have almond milk in my fridge, which we could definitely use as well. And you could use a non-animal based butter in here. So anything like that would be fine too. So, well, this melts. After it melts, I'm going to add in my flour, which is just 1 tablespoon of flour. Well, keeping an eye on my breadcrumbs over here so they're not going to turn to caramelized brown into burnt, right? We just want them to be nicely golden brown. All right, so my butter has melted. I'm adding in 1 tablespoon of flour. All I'm doing is whisking it. Again, that flour is to thicken this sauce, to help thicken the sauce, and then I have half and half here. I have 2 cups of half and half. If you want to use heavy cream, you can. I would just only use 1 cup of heavy cream and then 1 cup of chicken stock or vegetable stock, or you could easily use water, totally up to you. Okay, to this butter and flour mixture, I'm also gonna add in my aromatics, right? So I'm gonna do garlic, and then I'm gonna do a little bit of onion in here, about 1/4 of an onion here. That's all I'm gonna do until they're golden brown, and that's literally it. All right, so my onions are done, and so now I'm going to add in my milk, and you just want to stir constantly as you're adding it. That'll just help to prevent any lumps from occurring. Perfect. And now I'm just going to turn down the heat. I'm going to let it kind of bubble to a little bit of a simmer, stirring constantly to prevent it from scorching from the bottom. 5 minutes roughly until it starts to change in consistency, becomes a little bit thicker, and then we're going to add in our salt, pepper, a little bit of nutmeg, and then our cheese into there. So our sauce has thickened, and now it's time to add our delicious cheese into this and a little bit of nutmeg and some seasoning, right? So we are going to add just a pinch of salt, roughly a teaspoon of salt into this, and then you want to taste it a little bit before you put it on to your Brussels sprouts, just to make sure the seasoning is right. We are using a salty cheese. I'm using Gruyere and I'm using Parmesan, right? Parmesan's super salty, so you need to just watch your salt here. And then just whisk this a little bit more. You also are going to add nutmeg into this. This is very traditional for this sauce. It just adds that extra bit of something. You'll be like, oh, that nutmeg in there, that adds a lot of punch to it. So I'm just going to, just about 1/8 of a teaspoon. You don't need too much nutmeg here. I'm gonna freshly grate this in here. You don't need freshly grated. I just love using freshly grated. So 1/8 of a teaspoon. Oh, smell of nutmeg, so good. Just that, and then you're going to add about 1/4 of a teaspoon of pepper into here. Again, just stirring so it doesn't burn on the bottom. 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, and you can always add more if you want to, depending on how you like your pepper. And then I'm going to add in my cheese. This is not 2 cups, I wish it was 2 cups, 1 cup of cheese into here, and you're going to whisk until it's melted. And you can turn the heat off at this point because your sauce is just going to melt that in there because it's already hot. And that's it. All we're waiting for are those Brussels sprouts to finish, and then we'll put it all together. All right, our Brussels sprouts are all roasted and golden brown, as you can see here. Look how good they look, right? That's what you're looking for, that golden brown color there. And then our sauce is done because we finished that sauce, and it's beautifully luscious. I mean, look at that. So good, and you can taste the garlic, a little bit of that nutmeg in there. All right, let's put it together. All you have to do, pour this over your Brussels sprouts until they're coated. Just wanna go back and forth. Oh, hear that sizzle? So good. All right, just till they're evenly coated here. And what I love about this, I've added smoked poblanos in this for a little bit of heat and smokiness, and that's been really good. You can change this up with the cheeses too. You don't have to use Gruyere, you can use another cheese. play around with this recipe and make it your own. But of course, my way is delicious too. All right, so this is all in there. And then all we're gonna do is add in our breadcrumbs, because look how beautiful those are, right? Nice toasted golden brown. Our oven's still at 450. We're gonna pop this in the oven for about 10 minutes, just until everything's bubbly, golden brown. That's it. And this, remember, you can roast those Brussels sprouts ahead of time if you want to. You can get your sauce ready, and you can get all of your topping ready here. And then Thanksgiving Day, just literally put it in the oven and heat it through, right? I'm all about prepping ahead. All right, sprinkling these babies on. Ooh, yeah. And that, my friends, is it. So again, I'm gonna pop this in the oven, still 450 degrees, let it cook for about 10 minutes, just until it starts to bubble through. That's it, and then let's eat. All right, the piece de resistance has completed. I don't know if you can hear that, but the bubbling is ridiculous. So can you get a look at this? How amazing do those Brussels sprouts look, right? Totally different than my steamed Brussels sprouts growing up and dipping them in vinegar. I hope you find just as much joy baking this Thanksgiving or Friendsgiving, as we're talking about, and making these Brussels sprouts as much as I do. Again, put your favorite twist on it, play with the cheeses, play around with it, but this is one of my favorite recipes that is definitely going to be on my table for a long period of time. So, from my family to yours, happy Thanksgiving, and for more videos like this, please check out our YouTube channels and check out our blog, and make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Take care. Bye.